Welcome to episode 5 of the Mech Series, and no SolidWorks this time, but I'll be mentioning as many alignment mechanisms as I can, and hopefully I'll cover all of them. I'm not really a follower of 2x2, so I won't really cover some of the 2x2 mechanisms, so I might miss out on them. But I think I actually know all the mechanisms for 4x4 and above. But if I do miss out something, you can comment in the description below. So, what is an alignment mechanism? Or should I ask the even more basic question, what is an even cube? So, an even cube is actually an odd cube, but every piece that belongs to the inner layer, you basically just chop off the heads of all of those pieces, then you resize all the outer layers to cover over that gap. So what that means is that you have no control over how the inner layer turns. So it can go with this side, and it can go with this side with equal chance, and you can also end up with a situation where it goes with neither side and your cube is basically jammed. You can't turn it at all, except for this one axis. The first alignment mechanism I want to mention is V-cube. So how the V-cube alignment mechanism works is, there's a hole somewhere inside this centerpiece along the sides, and then all these outer small internal pieces actually have an extra bump that fits into this hole here. And whenever you move the cube, it will actually click in and out, and this will help the inner layer stay with one side. But the problem is, the cube is still symmetrical. It still means that there's a chance that both sides can click out at the same time. So this is what happens along this axis. And you notice what has happened here is, the screw is actually here. So basically, I got a situation like this, but the inner layer is not visible. So the cube still looks okay, but the second alignment mechanism that I want to talk about is bandaging. So unlike the clicking mechanism, this one actually works. So imagine all these so-called rotated pieces are part of the bandage mechanism. So you basically glue a corner to the core, and centers by default won't move. So what happens is, now these two layers are stuck together. These three edges also can't move, but yeah, you can also create this mechanism by gluing three edges to the core, or gluing one corner. It actually doesn't make a difference. Here I chose the corner. So these two layers are stuck together, they can't move, so you basically end up with something like that, which is equivalent to this. And when you do this, it's equivalent to this. So you basically have a functional 2x2, and this mechanism works for 2x2. However, if you want to do it to a bigger cube, you end up with a problem, because whenever you turn this layer will go along with it. This one and this one and this one are fine, but if you want to turn this layer, you have an internal slice move, and likewise for this and this. And because of that, you will have a lot of friction and you have a horrible turning cube. Rubik's brand 4x4 V2 and the Wheat Eden 4x4 actually did this. The third alignment mechanism that I'm going to talk about is the block of the Eastsheen mechanism. So basically, what happens is, the core has a big block attached to it. So basically, the block will prevent the two T-centers from sliding past. So whenever you turn the T-center, the inner layer will move along with it. Like that. So this is the hidden inner layer. And then this thing will actually be stuck to the second layer. However, this piece also exists right here, and if you want to turn it like that, it works. But if you want to turn it like that or like that, now this piece will actually run against this block if you want to turn it in this direction, and therefore you will force the inner layer to turn with it. You will end up with a middle layer that never misaligns. So the problem with this mechanism is, it requires all the members of the second layer to be long enough to touch the core like that. Quite a lot of cubes don't really follow this mechanism, so it's quite limited where you can use this mechanism. So the fourth mechanism that I'm going to talk about is the Memyselfandpi mechanism. So this was introduced a very long time ago by Memyselfandpi, and he actually has a tutorial on how to modify a V-Cube 6. And in that tutorial, first he actually destroyed the entire clicking mechanism of the V-Cube. And then after that, he glued two pieces to the core. So these two pieces will help to keep the inner layer aligned in two axes, namely this axis and this axis. Because this third layer you see here, if you were to build it all the way up, it will run into this piece which is now stuck to the core, and if you want to push the piece further, the core has to go along with it, and likewise for this entire layer. So this will take care of two axes, and for the third axis, he took care of it by gluing pins to all the screws, which is not done to this particular V-Cube. The advantage of this mechanism is that It's applicable to cubes with very shallow second and third layers, and the very large outer layers that go around the core. If you use the Eastsheen alignment mechanism, meaning putting a block on the core, firstly there's no space, and secondly, even if you were to hollow out the core and make some space and find a way to connect the outer layer to the core, then you will just end up with the bandaging mechanism. This mechanism can be used in many more cubes compared to the Eastsheen alignment mechanism, which requires a very very long and deep second layer to go all the way down, which the Pi mechanism does not require that. However, you run into a problem where you have to tamper with the screws because of the pins, and this means that it's not that easy to tension your cubes, and the pins also break off quite easily. And yeah, this mod is also not very mass producible. The fifth alignment mechanism I would like to talk about is Shengshou, and this is applicable only to the 4x4. All the other big cubes have a different mechanism from this one. So basically what you have here is a Memyselfandpi mod. So two pieces here are bandaged to the center, but one difference from the Pi mod is that there are no pins to keep this aligned. Instead, the core sprouts out a series of hooks to hook all these small internal pieces in and prevent them from moving in this direction. So if you really want to move one of these pieces, you drag the whole internal layer with it, and that keeps the inner layer in alignment. However, this actually removes the advantage that the Pi mod has over the Eastsheen, because the Pi mod is a very surface mechanism and it can be used in cubes with very shallow second layers, whereas the Shengshou 4x4 actually needs to have a very deep second layer. Like this piece goes all the way down, because these hooks come up from the core, so obviously the second layer has to be touching the core in order for it to stick to the core and keep it aligned. The sixth alignment mechanism that I'm going to talk about is by far the most popular one, and it's none other than the X-Cube alignment mechanism by XB27. The centerpiece is being split into two parts. The first part is a circular piece that does not move, and the second part is a square piece that can move. So the square piece helps to fulfill the normal function of a centerpiece, because centerpieces are supposed to rotate around in that spot, but the circular piece helps to keep another feature in its place and prevent that other feature from rotating, and these are the bumps. So the bumps help to keep the inner layer aligned in two axes, and it's very important that they have to stay fixed to this spot. So this entire pillar in the middle is locked to the core. Imagine the whole cube is fully assembled and I want to do a UW. So when I do that, this piece will move and it will drag the whole inner layer along with it, because this entire groove here is a place for the bump to stay, and it will push, like it will hook onto the bump and just push the entire inner layer along with it. So this is by far the best alignment mechanism in my opinion, but there is one problem that I faced when trying to use this mechanism, and this is something I discovered when designing cubes, which is basically the mechanism of the cube, and what makes it stay stable is this wing right here. And if you were to totally multiply along one axis, you get this circle, like this big circle around here. And the bump actually takes up space. So let's say this is a 62mm 4x4 and the center pieces also need to have some thickness. And then this bump takes up a bit more space, so there's a height restriction. There's this certain space that the circle cannot enter. If not, the bump is too small or the centerpiece is too thin and it can break. So I basically have a height restriction problem, but this is very minimal and only accounts for like 2mm or so worth of difference, and it's not really a big deal. So the seventh alignment mechanism that I want to talk about is the Gun 460 mechanism. And this is very similar to the XB mechanism. You have an immovable center pillar, but the bumps are now no longer on the top. They are actually in the middle of the stock. So actually this helps to get rid of that height restriction problem that I mentioned earlier, because now the bump is no longer occupying space on top and you can make that circle bigger. And because of that, you can make the internals bigger, make the whole mechanism bigger and make it more stable. That's all to the 7 alignment mechanisms, but I actually have an 8th mechanism. It's not a real one, it's just a theoretical one that I came up with, but it's going to take very long to explain, so I think I want to leave that for another episode.